Wazer water jet here, and I've programmed in the cut of the flowers for the garden stake, and you can see it start up. It's relatively noisy, but it does the job. So here it is. You can kind of see through the lid. It takes a little while. And fast forward into opening, and here are some of the flowers for the garden stake. I'm brushing away the granite dust that is used for the cut. So here's a 3-inch by 23.5-inch piece of Tecta, along with my cutouts that I'm combining to create a garden stake. I am using a stand that I'll list in the comments where I've gotten it. It's great for a decorative piece for your garden or landscape. So I'm cleaning with my own vinegar, water, and alcohol. And I like using that because I know that my pieces will get nice and clean, and it's easy to blend, and it's relatively inexpensive. So I'm just placing them down in just random, somewhat random, picking out the 3 colors. I have a light aqua, is I believe 1408. I have a turquoise, which is, oh, somebody help me with that. And then I have true blue, which is 1164, no, 1464. Turquoise, I think, is 1406. Ta-da! And then some green scrap. Here's some frit powder, and I'm using the powder to accent the flowers. And what I've done mostly is taken some darker tones from the flowers that I already have, the colors that I have. So I've chosen them ahead of time. This, I put together a little glue and water. Yes, you can use glass tack. I get that question a lot. But I like combining my own because it's a little less expensive. And I don't really have to worry about running out because I have that. Whenever I'm using powder, I'm wearing a mask, and I elevate it so that I can pick it up easily. Dust, dust, dust. And using the same brush, I wind up using the other end of the brush to just mark in and push the powder toward the center to give me a little variation of color. And glue and water to glue down. To tell you the truth, that glue and water on the Tecta doesn't really do too much. So speeding up a little because it's pretty redundant. The other thing I like to do, if am I using a powder that I haven't used before, and probably should have done on some of these colors here, is I like to make a test tile and practice how much powder I need to get the tint that I want. And because sometimes we often will not use enough because we think it's really thick and it's going to make a big difference. But powder is mostly air, and I know a lot of us forget that, me included. So I probably could have put a little bit more powder on there. Live and learn. Make sure I reuse The same thing with the blue ones. Now that's not going to show up as much. Powder's not going to show up as much, mainly because it's a darker color that I've used. The glass is darker. So I'm adding yellow coarse frit for the center of each of the flowers. I love having this regular spoon that, using pliers, just made it thinner to get to all these little areas in between the glass and in small spaces, and it works really well. I did choose to just use one color for the centers. I thought that yellow would really pop, but any color works. You know, and also the yellow represents flower centers anyway. I think a lot of them are yellow tones. Tweezers work really well to move the coarse frit around and to place it in the valley in between the glass. I like using that better than my fingers. I often will, my fingers will get in the way. So now I'm going to make the branches, the stems, and I have a torch. I don't have room in my studio for a big torch, so I like the portableness of this creme brulee torch. I just got it on Amazon. I wear safety glasses. I also have the torch on a bisque tile, which is heat resistant, so I don't get any have any accidents or burning problems. This is a 2mm stringer. I find the 2mm work nicely with the creme brulee torch. And if you notice, I'm holding in the stringer while I see the red-orange flame. That's the hottest part of the flame, and the more you reach the blue center, the red part, I'm actually, I need to put it up higher. The closer to that center of the flame, the hotter it will be, and I'm moving it out and in. Farther away, it's not as hot. So if you notice that it's getting too stringy or too loose, bring it away from the flame. More movement, you can want more movement, or you see that little skinny, I want the line to get thick and thin. I move it toward the flame a little bit more. So you can play with that. You can even use small pieces of glass. The creme brulee torch really works well, and personally I like it. So fast speed. So now I'm placing the stringer on the panel, and when you notice it, it's not going to lie flat. It's going to lie flat once it's fired. So don't worry about that. I'm just placing in between the voids, connecting the flowers kind of like a vine. You notice how it's kind of away from the surface. It will flatten out once it's fired. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but this will be a tack fuse. So we will keep the shape of what we're working with right now. This is a spring green, so it's a nice warm, bright green. You could use multiple colors if you wanted to, but I like spring green. Yeah, so I'm adding some extra vine shapes because I'm going to be adding some buds onto that. And it's easily broken, but also I can use the nippers if my fingers wear out. So my nippers come in handy again. The glass that I'm using here is just scrap green. I'm not sure what color it is. This is a darker green. On the right hand side I also have a lime green. That's a striker, but I use a little bit of both. And I'm not worried too much. I got little triangle shapes. These were the negatives from using the Wazer and cutting out some clovers from previous. And so I'm just using a big yogurt container, and I'm taking my nippers and putting them inside and holding both sides so they don't fly across the room. And I'm not too worried about specific shapes here, just so long as it has like a little triangular shape or you know, a leaf shape, really. Different sizes, large and small. Just playing with the scraps, placing them in the voids. Playing with the area and the shapes that I have here. Trying to get large and small pieces. And, you know, this is where, you know, just stepping back and looking at it comes in handy. In between when you're using the nippers and cutting the glass, you know, take a little break in between and seeing what happens, seeing how it looks. Kind of looks like a holly leaf. Okay, little cleanup as I go. That's the striker. That's a lime green striker. So that kind of goes along with that spring green. You know, it has a little bit of that warm yellow tone to it. And sometimes using two colors gives it a little bit more variety. But and you know what? It's kind of hard to see the strikers ahead of time. So sometimes if I'm using strikers, I will pre-fire and tape it to the glass so that I can see what it's going to look like, just to give me a heads up. But I didn't for this one. It's very similar to spring green. I'm not sure if that lime green was a product of when Bullseye was having to refabricate glass and come up with different formulas, so not use certain metals. But you can see a little bit of difference, but it really does change once it's fired. And even with the glue and water mixture gluing it down, my fingers still move it around. And that's kind of why I use tweezers periodically, so that I don't move all my creation around. I will definitely, before I pick it up to put it in the kiln, I definitely will either glue it with the glue and water, or I like to dab, especially for these little pieces. I didn't show it in the video, but I like to dab super glue around the edges just for moving to the kiln. And the super glue will disappear in the kiln. So those types of things are like just fast to get them going. And, you know, and I tell my students when I do use the super glue that it isn't going to make it stick in the kiln. The kiln's going to make it stick. What it will do is keep it stuck when you're working on it. So It's just an easier way to work. And so now this coarse frit in the different blues, and I did decide to choose a different blue, a lighter blue. I still use the turquoise, but I'm just adding some buds. On some of those stems. And that's kind of fun, just an added feature. It gives a little bit more variation of size. And, you know, even though the flowers are all the same size, we want to add some smaller elements to add some interest. So, and I'm using my tweezers again. These are just regular tweezers. They're nothing special. I have some longer ones, but I kind of like these. These work well. And if you notice, I love using the lid. It makes it easier. And we're speeding up. All done. Ready for the kiln. Tack fuse. Careful.